Welcome to Thursday, June 19th, 2025. Your podcast this morning brought to you by ConverseCountyTourism.com. Feel the energy of Converse County. Explore Douglas's Railroad Heritage, Ayers Natural Bridge, and the Jackalope Legend. Glen Rock boasts scenic trails, dinosaur history, and small-town charm. Plan your visit today at ConverseCountyTourism.com. Well, the blue herons hanging out there in Wind River Country and under blue skies and fair weather that is really going to be found in many areas of the Intermountain West and the Western High Plains is a much drier, more stable air mass has come in after all the excitement of the thunderstorms, the tornadoes, the big hail in the region, and the significant rains, now really shifting gears. So the heat is on. Now, unfortunately, we're going to be looking at the warm temperatures combined with very low humidity as the Pacific trough begins to push inland. This is going to cause a steep pressure gradient between the high pressure overhead now and the low pressure along the Pacific Northwest coast. That means the wind picks up. The wind is going to be a real nuisance, especially in the Great Basin and along and west of the divide, starting today and really going through the next 3 days. Now, the winds get going east of the divide a little bit later on. That's going to lead to some really high fire danger. So we're going to need to really be careful over this next 72 hours because of the heat and the wind of the dryness. So that's going to lead to high fire danger, especially west of the divide. Then the Pacific Northwest, Southwest Canada, Montana, you're going to see showers and thunderstorms moving in this weekend as that trough settles in. So there's going to be some wet areas up there, while dry and windy conditions will be found elsewhere. Then, as we've been advertising, cooling off as the trough comes through late in the weekend and early next week east of the divide. Now, we do have some photos and some videos to show you from what happened Tuesday. As we all know, it was very busy around here and all across the region. Here's a great video of a tornado near the Dave Johnson Power Plant near Glen Rock, Wyoming, that occurred on Tuesday. This was one of many funnel clouds and tornadoes that were noted in the region. Of course, we had the very large hail that hit parts of Colorado and parts of Wyoming and Nebraska. The middle of June, as we have talked many times, climatologically speaking, is kind of a peak, kind of a spike for this kind of activity. So thanks for sending that on in. And other dark clouds and big storms, probably this photo associated with that same cell or close to it that we saw with the tornado. And here's a shot from Fraser, Colorado. Beautiful shot there of a shower. Yeah, that white streak was probably hail. As it came on through, as many areas of the Colorado Front Range picking up the pieces after big hail Monday night and Tuesday. Then we go back to the more gentle photos of the last 24 hours or so, and a great shot of the Milky Way from Jan Curtis in southwest Colorado under the dark skies there. The Milky Way really coming on out. Satellite photos show very little going on across a good chunk of real estate here. So enjoy the sunshine, the warm temperatures, and the dry conditions on this Thursday that will lead into Friday. But if we go a little bit further west, well, you can see a swirl there off the west coast of British Columbia. And you can see some stronger jet stream energy coming in on the backside of it with the low right here. Now, they've had a bit of a heat wave up in Alaska, and here's why. There's been a high pressure ridge that's been building up there, and that's been building the heat. But it's also drove the cooler, more moist air into the Gulf of Alaska. This ridge building here is going to drive this system inland, this unseasonably strong system coming in for the first weekend of summer. Remember, when there's a ridge here, the west goes into the fridge. Ridge, fridge. So you get this big displacement. This seems counterintuitive, but when Alaska's warm, the western United States is cold. You would think it would be the opposite. When Alaska's cold, we're warm. So this configuration is something we show you all the time in the cold season. So this weather map shows June 21st. This would be something more May or April in terms of how it looks. We got that big ridge here that'll set up in the southeastern United States. And you can see the black bars here, the tight gradient in air pressure right here. And this really gets going later today, tomorrow, and into Saturday. This is by noon Saturday. So in this gradient area where you have the cold air with the low and the deeper low pressure, the stronger high pressure to the east, you're going to get the wind. Through Saturday, it's going to be quite wet in British Columbia and Alberta, parts of Montana, southern Saskatchewan, the Pacific Northwest coast, cold and wet, even some showers getting over the Cascades and the Olympics, into eastern areas of Oregon and northeastern there, ports of Washington state, and even into Idaho. So this is through Saturday, while dry conditions will be noted elsewhere. Temperature-wise, between now and Monday, it looks like this. Really cooling off in the northwest. There's the heat east of the divide, a big contrast. And so where this contrast is right here, temperature and pressure, here comes the wind. Now, if you're driving a high-profile vehicle, you're pulling a trailer, big RV, this is by later on this afternoon. So you can see along Interstate 80 here, you're going to have a lot of wind. Winds are going to be very stout and very gusty here today. Tomorrow, they pick up and get even worse. Now notice, a lot of this wind is west of the divide, and that's how initially it's going to go. So if traveling anywhere through here, and this is also the areas we've got to be really careful with fire conditions because of the heat and the wind coming off the deserts and getting that dry desert air coming in like this, but a lot of wind. And then this is for Saturday. Still very windy along the I-80 corridor in south central Wyoming, back across the Great Basin states. Notice we start to get the wind now coming out into the plains Saturday. Then on Sunday, the wind eases a lot west of the divide. It's still there, but look what happens out here on the plains. Woo! Very stout southwest wind comes on into the region. So the wind is going to be a factor because of this unseasonably strong Pacific low pressure system coming on in. Also, when we get into late Sunday and Monday, shower and thunderstorm activity will form in that strong southerly flow as it brings moisture in. Some strong thunderstorms will be occurring up here. That'll be something to watch out for this weekend. And also, now we had a rare occurrence earlier this week of overnight thunderstorms in some front range areas. And a lot of that had to do with the timing of the last Pacific trough arriving at night. Well, the same thing could happen. Kind of put this in the back of your mind. Overnight Sunday into Monday morning, we may see a cluster of strong thunderstorms develop overnight Sunday or Sunday evening into Monday morning there. And that'll be something to watch out for again. If you look at temperature anomalies by Monday, there's that huge contrast. Tons of heat in the Midwest, the Great Lakes, and along the East Coast. But actually a larger part of North America is actually going to be colder. But I can guarantee all you're going to hear about this weekend is this heat. These are very cool temperatures for the first several days of summer here in the Intermountain West and the Northern Plains, moving in by Monday and Tuesday. A lot of areas, Monday and Tuesday, highs will only be 60s and lower 70s. By Monday, the trough kind of settles into the Great Basin. There's the heat dome along the East Coast. And as we've been showing you, the two pressure systems are going to be working together to start to draw that deeper subtropical moisture in the lower latitudes down here and want to bring it north. So this pattern indeed is evolving that we showed you about a week ago. So what does that mean? Well, if we were to loop the precipitable water map, starting with Saturday and then going into next week, we'll kind of let it run here and let you observe what's going on. First of all, in the first images, you can see the very dry air over the Central Rockies and Great Basin. Then, as that pattern evolves, you can see the structure of the ring of fire that develops for several days. Now, it's not permanent. It goes about 3 or 4 days. But then what happens, after we get this ring of moisture that comes up out of Mexico, right here, starting Monday, going into Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, notice what happens down here. We see another push of deeper moisture, the green and blue, moving into Mexico, getting into the southwestern areas of the United States. So you can kind of think of this as like a straw. It's going to be bringing that moisture up into the region. And it doesn't look like, while the ring goes about 3 or 4 days, the last several images here of this loop show that over the lower latitudes of Mexico, down into Central America, the precipitable water is quite high as we get into the first few days of July. So could have a lot of fireworks July 4th weekend in this part of the country right here. Now, let's just take a look at the precipitation totals for a week. So basically this goes from this weekend to next Saturday. See the ring right here? You can really see that ring of fire where the showers and thunderstorms are going to fire up around the ridge right here. Look at New Mexico. They could really use the rain. Looks like they've got a really good chance. Now, keep in mind, this axis could be a little more east, could be a little more west into Arizona, but it does look like the feed of that deeper subtropical moisture indeed is going to come up next week. And along this path, underneath it, and just on either side of this black line here, there will be an active shower and thunderstorm pattern developing next week, along with the temperatures that are going to be cooler underneath that ring. Now, that's what the model is showing. It's very important to counterbalance models with the physical realities of the situation. Models are tools, they're not reality. We've showed you and been talking about sea surface temperature anomalies and getting the North American monsoon started. We've been talking about you need to hit this 26 degrees Celsius or 79 degrees Fahrenheit sea surface temperatures in the Gulf of California. While we do have some patches of green here, we now have a lot of yellow that's gone up into here, and certainly it's more than 26 degrees C here. So the Gulf of California really warming up, and look how warm the Gulf is here. So the keys that we know historically from scientific research, that if you're going to want to get it wet in Mexico and into the southwestern United States, you've got to get those water temperatures warmed up, and they are. And they're going to continue to warm up. And if we look at the anomaly chart, the sea surface temperature anomaly chart, you can see the colors there. We've got just 1 or 2 little tiny patches of blue, but for most part, it's warmed up. It's plenty warm here. The Gulf here will be warm all summer. So the physical current situation does match up with what the models are suggesting. Something to watch as we get into next week and into that first part of July, especially for the Southern Rockies and the Southwest United States. Have yourself a good Thursday. We'll see you tomorrow.